We'll start in 1 minute. Today we'll be in section 2.3 on solving formulas for specified variables. First, we look at a definition for a mathematical formula. A mathematical formula is a general rule or principle that relates two or more quantities represented by variables in an equation. Okay, there are lots of formulas. We'll just talk about a few. This first one, the perimeter of a rectangle. Capital P is the perimeter. That's the distance around the rectangle. Capital L is the length, and W is the width. So we draw a picture of a rectangle. A rectangle has its four sides and it has four right angles or four 90-degree angles. And if we label the two lengths, capital L, and the two widths, capital W, then the perimeter around that is L plus W plus W. And then combining like terms, it's 2L plus 2W. Yeah, the next topic, right triangles. Every right triangle has one right angle and two acute angles. And a right angle is 90 degrees. And the measure of an acute angle is between 0 degrees and 90 degrees. Okay, there are many right triangles, but they all have one thing in common. They all have one angle that is a right angle, or 90 degrees. Okay, a very famous theorem regarding right triangles is the Pythagorean Theorem. So this is a formula to memorize or to know. The Pythagorean Theorem, this says c to the second equals a to the second plus b to the second. So in this formula, c represents the length of the hypotenuse, and the lengths of the two legs are a and b. So up here, the hypotenuse of a right triangle is the side that is opposite of the right angle. This is the hypotenuse. So the hypotenuse of a right triangle is always the longest side, and the two shorter sides are referred to as legs. Okay, and it turns out that in every right triangle, if we label the length of the hypotenuse as C units, whatever the units happen to be, and if we label the lengths of the two legs by A and B, then if you square the length of the hypotenuse, that will be equal to the sum of the squares of the lengths of the two legs. So that is true for every right triangle. Here, the next formula, simple interest formula. So the formula is capital I equals capital P times R times T. Capital I is the amount of simple interest. Capital P is called the principal. That is the amount of money that is invested. R is the annual simple interest rate in decimal form. And T represents the number of years that the principal is invested. Okay, so the interest is measured at, well, in the United States anyway, capital I, which represents the simple interest, is measured in dollars. The principal is measured in dollars. That's the amount of money invested. And we'll encounter this formula a little bit later with some actual numbers to use. Okay, on the next page, we'll look at some more formulas. The area of a triangle. This is the formula for the area of a triangle. Capital A equals 1/2 times B times H. So in this formula, capital A represents the area of a triangle. B represents the length of the base. And H represents the height of the triangle. Well, if we draw a triangle, this is not intended to be a right triangle. Triangles don't have to be right triangles. So in a triangle, we have three options for identifying a base and a height. So in this picture, I'm going to label this lower horizontal side as the base. So B represents the length of this side of the triangle. And since I identified this side as the base, the height is the length of the line segment that connects the vertex that is opposite of the base, so that that line segment is perpendicular to the base. Perpendicular meaning that it forms a right angle. So I'll label this H. This is the height. So the units used could be any of a number of units. If we're using, say, inches, so if the base is B inches and the height is H inches, then the area is square inches. So once we know this side and the base, and if we know the height, then the area is 1/2 times the base times the height. So I had this space down here. I should have drew my picture down here. But I guess we're okay. Okay, the next formula, the sum of the angle measures in a triangle. If the measures of the three angles of a triangle are A degrees, B degrees, and C degrees, then when you add those up, it has to add up to 180 degrees. Okay, so it doesn't matter what kind of triangle it is. So if you label the angle measures in degrees of the three angles in a triangle, they have to add up to 180 degrees. Okay, let's consider a right triangle. And I'll label this angle A degrees and this one B degrees. So what can you say about A degrees and B degrees? If these are the measures of the two angles that are not the right angle. I know it's hard for you to read my mind. You might not know what I'm trying to get at, but since this angle is 90 degrees, the right angle is 90 degrees, it must mean that the sum of the other two angles is 90. Because altogether we have 180 degrees. So if I just label this one 90 degrees, because every right angle is 90 degrees, then A degrees plus B degrees plus 90 degrees is 180. If we subtract 90 degrees from both sides, then the sum of the two acute angles has to be 90 degrees. That make sense? Okay. And another formula, this might be more applicable, especially if you live near the Canadian border. Temperature conversion equations. In Canada, they measure the temperature in degrees Celsius, whereas in the United States, we measure temperature in degrees Fahrenheit. So we can convert degrees Fahrenheit to degrees Celsius or vice versa. So for these two formulas, capital C represents the temperature in degrees Celsius, and capital F represents the temperature in degrees Fahrenheit. And it turns out that, well, if you know what the temperature is in degrees Fahrenheit, we can use this formula on the left to convert degrees Fahrenheit to degrees Celsius. So the degrees Celsius is equal to 5/9 times the quantity degrees Fahrenheit minus 32. On the other hand, if you take a trip to Canada and you're listening to the local radio station and it says the temperature outside is 40 degrees Celsius, well, what does that mean in terms of degrees Fahrenheit? Well, you can use this formula. You can replace capital C with 40 degrees Celsius, do the arithmetic, and that will tell you what the corresponding temperature is in degrees Fahrenheit. So I don't know about you, but when I hear degrees Celsius, I have to do the conversion so I have an idea of what they're saying, because I identify with degrees Fahrenheit more than I do with degrees Celsius. Okay, well, we'll do that a little bit later. Okay, so now we can start solving formulas for specified variables. So in this set of exercises, we'll solve each formula for the specified variable. So we need to learn how to solve equations whose solutions are expressed in variables, not just numbers. So solve the formula capital P equals 2L plus 2W for L. Well, we have to get rid of the plus 2W, so we can do that if we subtract 2W from both sides. So we get P minus 2W equals 2 times L. So all I did was subtract 2W from both sides. And then the next step, since we want to solve for L, 2 is the coefficient of L right now. So now we just divide every term on both sides by 2. So we can divide the entire quantity, P minus 2W, we can divide it all by 2. And then 2L divided by 2 is just L. Okay, so this is a perfectly fine way to write the solution of L in terms of the other variables W and P. You can write it in another form, but you always have to make sure you're careful. There are a lot of misunderstandings in algebra and arithmetic. So let's consider simplifying this, or maybe that's not the right word, but writing it in a slightly different form. Since I'm dividing the entire quantity P minus 2W by 2, we could write it as P divided by 2 minus 2W divided by 2. We could write it that way, right? And then 2W divided by 2 can be simplified to W. So we could write this as L equals P over 2 minus W. So this is probably, well, this might be the more safe way to write it. Okay, the next one, part B, solve the formula capital A equals 1/2 times B times H for B. We want to get B by itself. On the right-hand side, we have the coefficient factor of 1/2. 1/2 is the coefficient. 1/2 times B times H. So we want a coefficient of 1. So we can multiply both sides by the reciprocal of 1/2, which is 2. 2 over 1 is 2. So multiply both sides by 2. 2A equals 2 times 1/2 times B times H. But since 2 times 1/2 is 1, we can write 2A equals B times H. So if I don't write a dot there, it still means that we're multiplying B times H. Okay, then we can solve for H if we just divide both. Sorry, we're solving for B. We can solve for B if we divide both sides by H. So divide the left-hand side by H. Divide the right-hand side by H. But on the right-hand side, H divided by H is 1. So we can write B equals 2 times A over H. Okay, in part C, solve the formula capital I equals capital P times R times T for R. We can solve for R in one step. So what should I do to solve this equation for R? So on the right-hand side, I have P times R times T. So yeah, so if I just divide both sides by P times T, then we'll be done. So divide the left-hand side by P times T, P times lowercase t. And then the right-hand side, P times R times T divided by P times T. P divided by P is 1, and T divided by T is 1, so this is R. Or we can just write R equals capital I divided by capital P times T. And now we have the temperature conversion formula. Solve the formula capital F equals 9/5 C plus 32. Solve for C. Well, we could solve for C in 2 steps. So what should we do first? Yeah, subtract 32 from both sides because we're trying to isolate C. So subtract 32 from both sides, we have F minus 32 equals 9/5 times C. And then the next step, yeah, multiply both sides of the equation by the reciprocal of 9/5. The reciprocal of 9 over 5 is 5 over 9. So on the left-hand side, 5 over 9, we should enclose F minus 32 in parentheses so that we have to make sure that we multiply the entire quantity F minus 32 by 5/9. And then on the right-hand side, 5/9 times 9/5 C. Well, anytime you multiply a non-zero number by its reciprocal, you just get positive 1. So 5 divided by 5 is 1, and 9 divided by 9 is 1. So we can write C is equal to 5/9 times the quantity F minus 32. Okay. So there's a question, wouldn't we solve further on this? Well, this is a perfectly fine way to write what C is. It's not incorrect to distribute multiplication by 5/9, but when using this formula, I think it's easier to leave it in this form if you want to convert degrees Fahrenheit to Celsius. Then all we have to do is replace F with that temperature, subtract 32 from it, and then multiply by 5/9. If you were to distribute multiplication, you would get C equals 5/9 times F minus 160 divided by 9. It's not that this is incorrect, but the arithmetic might be a little more difficult than just leaving it in this form. Well, we know the answer to the next one. Solve the formula C equals 5/9 times the quantity F minus 32 for F. But we'll still go through the steps. We want to solve for F. We see that we have a coefficient factor of 5/9. 5/9 times the quantity F minus 32. So the first thing to do, I think the easiest first step is just to multiply both sides by the reciprocal of 5/9. So in other words, multiply both sides by 9/5. So we have 9/5 times C equals 9/5 times 5/9 times the quantity F minus 32. But as we already know, 9 over 5 times 5 over 9 is 1. So we can rewrite this as 9/5 times C. And now we don't need the parentheses because the coefficient is just 1. And then the last step is to add 32 to both sides. And we get F equals 9/5 times C plus 32. So we saw that in advance because these two formulas are used to convert from one temperature to the other. If there's time, we can discuss how to derive these conversion formulas. But for now, we'll just finish what we're talking about. The next one, solve the formula capital V equals 1/3 times pi times r to the second times h for h. The Greek letter pi this letter is used to represent an actual number. Pi is approximately equal to 3.14159. The decimal expansion is non-terminating and non-repeating. But pi just represents a number, and so it's more convenient to use pi than to write out a decimal expansion for it. Okay, so solve this for h. Do you know what this is a formula for? This is a formula. Did someone say? Volume. It's a volume formula. A volume of what? It's the volume of a right circular cone. Something that looks like this. So the base is a circle. And the circle has radius r. And the distance from the tip of the cone to the center of the cone, perpendicular distance, is the height. So the volume of this cone is 1/3 times pi r squared times h. Pi r squared, do you know what that is? By itself, the pi r squared. Well, the pi r squared is the area of that circle that's in the base. Okay, so to solve this formula for h, V equals 1/3 times pi times r to the second times h. I suppose what I would start out doing is multiply both sides by the reciprocal of 1/3. In other words, multiply both sides by 3. So we get 3 times v. 3 times 1/3 is 1, so 3 times v equals pi r squared times h. And now we're just one step away from solving for h. We can just divide both sides by pi r squared. So 3 times v divided by pi r squared. And when we divide pi r squared times h by pi r squared, we're just left with h. Yeah.
Why wouldn't you just divide by h? Why pi r squared instead of h?
Well, we're solving for h, so we don't want to divide by h. We want h over 1 or just h. So we divided both sides by pi r squared. This represents a number. So in an abstract way, you can think of pi r squared as the coefficient of h. And then we just divide both sides by that coefficient. Does that make sense? All right, the next page. Use a formula to solve each word problem. In this one, the area of a triangle is 44 square feet. And the length of the triangle's base is 11 feet. Find the height of the triangle. So first write down the appropriate formula. The area of a triangle is 1/2 times the base times the height. And since we want to find the height, well, we can go about answering this problem in one of two ways. We can first solve the formula for h. So let's go ahead and do that. Solve the formula for h. We already did this before. So multiply both sides by 2. That's the reciprocal of 1/2. So 2a equals b times h. And then divide both sides by b. So 2a divided by b equals h. We're given that the area is 44 square feet, so we'll just write a equals 44. And we're also given that the base is 11, so we'll write b equals 11. And then to find the height, we can use any one of those equations and then solve for h. But this one, since the bottom equation is already solved for h, just replace a with 44 and b with 11. So we get 2 times 44 divided by 11. That's equal to the height. And then simplify this expression. 11 goes into 11 once and into 44 4 times. And so we get 2 times 4, which is 8, equals h. And we should write, or we should indicate the units just for practice. The height is 8 feet. Okay, so that's all there is to that. Part B, the amount of simple interest earned in 7 years at 4% per year is $5,480. Find the amount invested. Okay, the simple interest formula is capital I equals capital P times R times T. So to find the amount invested, that means we want to find the principal P. The principal is just the amount invested. Okay, so in this one, T is given to be 7 years. Capital I is given to be 5,480. When we're doing the arithmetic, we can omit writing down the units. So we'll just write down T equals 7 and I equals 5,480. What is the value of R? 4%, we want to convert it to its decimal equivalent. So R is 0.04. When we're using this formula, we have to convert the percent to its decimal equivalent. So do you know why 4% is the number 0.04?
Because it's 4 over 100.
Yeah, 4%. The term percent is one of those ancient languages, I think Latin, which means out of 100. So 4 out of 100, 4% can be thought of as 4 divided by 100. And then when you convert 4 divided by 100 into a decimal number, you get 0.04. So in the formula, we use 0.04. We can go about answering this question in one of two ways. We can first solve this equation for capital P if we divide both sides by R times T. And then afterwards, replace I with 5480. So P is equal to 5,480. R is equal to 0.04. And T is 7. Okay, I'll leave it in this form. You can use your TI 30A, whatever that is, and come up with a whole number for capital P. Okay, let's move on to the next problem. The short leg of a right triangle is 3 inches, and the hypotenuse is 5 inches. Find the length of the long leg of the right triangle. So for this problem, we're going to use the Pythagorean Theorem. So if we square the length of the hypotenuse, that's equal to the sum of the lengths of the squares of the lengths of the two legs. So c squared equals a squared plus b squared. And a particular right triangle is described. For this one, we're told that the short leg is 3 inches and the hypotenuse is 5 inches. And we want to find the length of the long leg. Well, even if it didn't say short leg and long leg, it would still work out the same, because if one of the legs is 3 inches and the hypotenuse is 5 inches, then it's going to turn out that the other leg is the long leg, even if we don't say it's the long leg. Okay, so we apply the Pythagorean theorem to this right triangle. So if we square the length of the hypotenuse, that's 5 squared, That's equal to the sum of the squares of the lengths of the two legs. So this is equal to 3 squared plus b squared. And then we just do the arithmetic and determine what the value of b is. 5 squared, we haven't really talked about exponents yet. 5 to the second, what does that mean?
5 times 5?
Yeah, 5 times 5, which is 25. And that's equal to 3 times 3, which is 9, plus b to the second. And then subtract 9 from both sides, we get 16 equals b to the second. And so we want b to be the positive number, which when raised to the second power is equal to 16. So what positive number would you raise to the second power to get 16?
4.
Yeah, 4. Or the positive square root of 16. So b is equal to the principal square root of 16 or the positive square root of 16. So the long leg is 4 inches. Okay, the next one, convert the temperature of 25 degrees Celsius to degrees Fahrenheit. Well, we could use either of the conversion formulas. We would just replace C with 25 and solve for F, regardless of which of those two formulas we use. But since we're converting from Celsius to Fahrenheit, we want, the more convenient thing to do would be to pick F equals. So what does F equal?
That's times 25 plus 32.
Yeah, F equals 9/5 C, 9/5 times C plus 32. So we just replace C with 25. So we have 9/5 times 25 plus 32, and then do the arithmetic. 9/5 times 25, think of 25 as 25 over 1. 5 goes into 5 once and into 25 5 times. And then 9 times 5 is 45, so the Fahrenheit is 45 degrees plus 32 degrees. So Fahrenheit is 77 degrees. See how that works? Okay, let's move on to the next page. This one, the perimeter of a rectangle is 154 feet. The length is 6 times longer than the width. Find the length and the width. Okay, the formula for the perimeter of a rectangle is the perimeter P is equal to 2 times the length plus 2 times the width. We're given that the perimeter is 154 feet. And what else are we given? We're also given that the length is 6 times longer than the width. So we want to convert this into an equation using the variables L and W and the other information. Okay, so the length is, that's when converting these types of sentences to equations, oftentimes the is, as it is in this case, represents an equal sign. So we could say the length is, or the length is equal to, and then how do we convert 6 times longer than the width?
Multiply the width by 6.
Yes, so 6 times W. It might make a little more sense if we just said that the length is 6 times the width. But if it's 6 times the width, it's 6 times longer, right? Are we all in agreement about this? Okay. So what we'll do is in the formula, we replace capital P with 154, replace L with 6W, so we have 2 times L, so that means we have 2 times 6W, and then plus 2W. What we have is just an equation with one variable in it, and we know how to solve those kinds of equations. So first, 2 times 6W is 12W. So we get this equation. 154 equals 12W plus 2W. And 154 equals 14W. And now what?
You divide by 14 on both sides.
Yeah, divide both sides by 14. And 154 divided by 14 is just 11. And so the width is 11 feet. Oh, we're also supposed to find the length. So the width is 11 feet. The length, which is 6 times longer than the width, is 6 times 11 feet, or 66 feet. You can verify that you have the right numbers. There are always ways that you can check your answer. You can, well, observe 66 is 6 times more than 11. And then if you find the perimeter by finding 2 times 66, which is 132, plus 2 times 11, which is 22, and those add up to 154. So you can check that in your head if you want. Okay, let's start the next one. The second angle of a triangle is 4 times the size of the first angle, and the third angle is 102 degrees more than the first angle. Find the angle measures of each angle. So these are angles from a triangle. So we'll write down variable expressions for the first angle, the second angle, and the third angle. Notice that the second angle and the third angle are described in terms of the first angle. So in a case like that, it is often convenient to pick a single variable to represent the first angle in this case. So I'm going to say that the first angle is x degrees. And then using the variable x and the other information, we'll come up with expressions for the second angle and the third angle. So if the first angle is x degrees and the second angle is 4 times the size of the first angle, how can we represent the size of the second angle? 4 times x, right? If the first angle is x degrees and the second angle is 4 times the size of the first angle, 4 times x is 4x degrees. Are we all in agreement? And then the third angle is 102 degrees more than the first angle. So if the first angle is x degrees, then how do we represent an expression that is 102 degrees more than that?
Addition.
X plus 120, right? Sorry, not 120, 102. Hey, we're out of time. I'll just write one more thing. We know that the 3 angles have to add up to 180. So this is our equation, x plus 4x plus x plus 102 equals 180. Solve that equation for x and then determine what the measures of the 3 angles are. Okay, online, you can type your first name followed by your last for attendance. Victor. Jesse. Bailey. Carter Hill. Nicholas Holman. Alden Heights. Melissa Jones. Anthony Cole. Michael Montoya. Jared Carlin. Richard Mendes. Raymond Rudder. Okay, that's it for today.